value.
That's true.
You
This
got to
is
call
true.
Kim Iverson for that, I think.
I know. She's amazing.
She
Okay,
is.
here we go. I really like her. Look up to her. Okay, I think we're on though. That actually happened pretty quickly that time. Okay. Hello, everyone. I am here with Dave. Dave, what is your last name again?
Spurrier.
Spurrier. And
Yeah.
Dave has a wonderful channel called Save America, Vote Tulsi Gabbard. And I'm going to let you maybe you could talk a little bit about that for anybody that hasn't seen your channel yet, just kind of what your purpose is. While I'm just going to share this to a couple places while you do that.
This is it's called stalling.
Yeah, it's called stalling, yeah.
In any event, yeah, if you haven't seen the channel, I'm kind of an upstart YouTuber on this platform. I've got a little over 3,200 subscribers now, which is pretty good. I focus a lot on Tulsi Gabbard and her campaign for president, but I do sometimes stray into other areas and talk about other things. I think I have a pretty loyal group of Tulsi folks who come over to get encouraged. Mm-hmm. So I try to stay positive and upbeat. However, there are days where it gets a little bit exhausting. So that's me.
Yeah, so you've had some, well, I've encountered it too, people calling me negative about Tulsi and her campaign just for, expressing concern about what will happen. Is the DNC, the DNC rules and the pledges, we talked about that in another live stream, set up against her. So, okay, I think we're set here. Okay, so one of the reasons, when I came across your channel, I was so thrilled, as I told you, because I felt so much like you and a lot of your viewers really represent the largest segment of the population, which is independents and a lot of non-voters. And so I'm kind of jokingly calling this Crossfire Revisited, but I thought we would be really daring and sort of go over some of the contract points for CFAR and CWAC that I work with, and also Movement for a People's Party, and just kind of see where are those areas that we do agree, because Tulsi Gabbard has been that kind of crossover candidate that appeals to people maybe a little bit independent leaning, right, but in these sort of Ron Paul, correct me if I'm wrong here, but in the kind of Ron Paul, wanting to cut military spending and those kinds of issues where we do agree. But of course, you'll never hear this on the news because they want to take every issue that divides us. And when I say us, I don't really, I'm a strong independent. I don't really, I guess I'm progressive, although, as Kim Iverson said, that word has been butchered. We need a new word. But okay, so I think we can just start. Why don't we talk a little bit about CWAC? That's candidates with the contract. And I think it's interesting that contract, has had the most crossover appeal because it's anti-corruption. It's getting money out of politics. And I think a lot of us can agree on that. But I wondered if there's anything, as you go, when you look through that contract, is there anything there that you don't agree with that stuck out,
Well, I don't have it on screen or anything here, so if you want to hit me with some...
Okay. That's good.
I did read it.
Sure. No, I expect you to have it memorized, Dave. Okay. Well, we have overturning Citizens United.
Yep. Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah.
Public campaign finance reform.
Absolutely.
Yep. And let's see, anti-corruption, 7-year employment ban for firms that employ lobbyists. Now, interestingly, recently, and I should have done a little more research, but I've been busy. I know there was something with AOC and Ted Cruz, right? Were they?
Yeah. Talk about strange bedfellows. Yeah, and it's weird because I saw that and I'm thinking to myself, this is great, but then you get the tribal behavior on both sides. Probably a little stronger on the Ted Cruz side on this one because AOC is very effective at marketing herself, and not that it's not necessarily bad, but the people and this is I consume media from the right and the left. I make no bones about the fact that I'm kind of reformed conservative.
Right.
I sound like a religious person here. I'm a Reformed Baptist. Okay, so it's hard when you watch somebody on the right just vilify somebody on the left, and they just use these talking points without delving into any kind of specifics.
Right.
You could never have this kind of compromise or this sort of these two supposedly polar opposite political people agreeing on this very important issue. And I was like, yes, good. But then you have the people that come in and try to undermine it based on who's doing it. Tulsi, this is one thing I like about Tulsi Gabbard, is she gets up there and she says, I don't care if it's a Republican idea or a Democrat idea or an independent idea.
Right.
As long as it helps the American people, what are we doing? We're just shooting each other down because, and this goes to your whole thing about parties and corruption, and you could go down the list. You and I can agree on corruption. I mean, who's going to disagree with getting corruption and money out of politics?
Right.
Very few people.
Well, the establishment in both parties, the top. And I think, that's one of the most frustrating things for me recently. There's a real divide among, I guess, progressives, again, that word. But, people that want to stay in and push to force the Democratic Party to basically represent the people again, which they haven't been doing. And then there are those of us, I think like me, where, okay, if that happens, that's great. I'll support that candidate. But I don't see much point in putting a lot of effort into that. I mean, they've shown us over and over again, they have no intention of changing anything. And then, we had the DNC fraud lawsuit where they basically just, the courts ruled that the DNC can just break their own charter and do whatever they want. So, my efforts, I really want to just focus on the candidates and the issues and sort of ignore the label. But there's a lot of animosity from the people that are still fighting to change the Democratic Party against people like me, because it's that vote shaming that comes up. And it's like, you're not going to vote for the lesser evil? Well, I just don't see it that way.
Yeah.
And so one of the things that we want to start doing here soon is really breaking down issue by issue. Like, what is the real difference on policy between, say, Joe Biden and Donald Trump?
That's a great question. We should sit and do a whole video just on that.
Yeah, exactly.
And then just throw it out there to every single any blue will do person and say, seriously, I've said this on Twitter. I said, okay, you're going to get a nicer version of what you have now. And who's to say that, one thing I realized by reading Listen Liberal, which by the way is right here. In case
I have my copy.
You got your copy there.
Yeah. Fantastic book.
It is. That Bill Clinton did more as a Democrat to destroy the banking industry. You go down the list of things, prisons, the prison reform that we're seeing now, that Trump actually did, and that Biden actually voted for. So one thing that Trump tweeted out recently is, wow, Joe Biden's the guy who co-authored the crime bill, and here I am, putting a little dent in it. And your head will explode because he's true, he's correct.
Right, exactly.
So a lot of Democrats can't wrap their mind around the fact that a Joe Biden is a Donald Trump. There's in fact, Trump has an anti-war instinct, I think. Biden does not. I think if Biden got in there, he would, because of the media, he'd have carte blanche, and his supporters apparently don't care. The people who are going to vote for him, they don't care if he's going to go to war as long as he's not Donald Trump.
Right. Well, the media, I mean, let's face it, they're just going to focus on the personality. I mean, that's what they do. And it just, it's baffling because you think they're not going to get away with this, right? Surely people will look into this a little bit. But people are, I mean, I think a lot of people are just too busy to do what we do. As you said, you know, we dig into all this stuff, but a lot of people, they're busy living their lives and they just want to know, they want to pick a team, pick a lane and stay in it, right?
Well, it's here's a great example when all the women on the View are, number one, apologizing for Biden's creepy behavior and saying, well, you know, it's Joe Biden. He's back in those days, you know, the personal space issues. So they resolved that in one show. And then, of course, you have Meghan McCain up there who, you know, is the daughter of, all right, you know, I don't want to hit McCain. He's not around to hit anymore. But the point is, there wasn't a war that John McCain didn't want us to be involved in. Okay. And she looks at like a Tulsi Gabbard as, you know, the Assad connection and, you know, soft on, you know, our enemies and so forth. And hey, I'm a peacemonger. No apologies for my peacemonger stance. There's no compromising anymore for me on that one. I mean, you put that into your list over there, and that one should be closer to the top. I mean, the financial stuff I think has to go on top though, because Americans think with their wallets. I don't think. See, you and I, we think, oh well, if we stop this war, we would save $1 trillion. Nobody's thinking that.
Yeah, that is mind-boggling. How over and over for decades, and we've had people will say, you know, about universal health care or anything, fixing our crumbling infrastructure. How are you going to pay for it? But why does no one ask that when we spend trillions on wars? It's like, how are we going to pay for that? That's just like in this other compartment, like we just expect that we just have to pay for that. So no one asks.
Yeah, it's really strange because my congressman, I don't even know if he's in my district. This is how bad I am right now. Rooney down here in South Florida, Trump trying to get money to the Panhandle. They got, was it Michael last year, and it was one of the worst hurricanes ever. And the guy vetoed the bill, said it was fiscally irresponsible. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, these people who their entire, I mean, the Panhandle was just ravaged, and this is emergency funding. Trump is going to sign the bill. You're a Republican, he's a Republican, and you're telling me it's fiscally irresponsible. This is where we are today.
Well, we're seeing the same thing, and it's so hypocritical. Okay, so when Obama was elected, we heard all Republicans basically objected to every single thing he tried to do, right?
Yes.
And now they're doing the same thing. I mean, it's like there's just this hatred for Trump. I mean, let's just stick to the issues and pay attention to what he's actually doing, right? And good for you for stomaching The View. I can't do it.
Well, I can't do it. I don't watch the show live. Just want everybody to know these are typically clips that are posted on either Twitter or YouTube, and somebody will do a little, like a Tim Black will do a breakdown. He's great, by the way. If people haven't watched Tim Black, he's a really good independent journalist on YouTube. But I'll watch some snippets, and there's a point where you want to stick your fingers down your throat because you'll be watching it and saying, who are these women? And I don't mean to be stereotypical because I don't think there are a lot of men watching The View, but who are these women in the morning, late morning, who are watching this particular show? Are these like, I don't know.
My neighbors.
They got to be the old school housewives, semi-retired. And this is the information they're getting, and you're just like, oh no. And how do you, like you say, it's a mass media across the board. Everybody is on the same exact page. Isn't that creepy?
It
really that creep anyone out?
Really, really is. We had a friend of mine, comedian Krish, who was here last weekend for a show in Chapel Hill, and we got on the subject. We did a live stream last Friday night, and it was just sort of free for all, talking about everything. But we got into talking about comedy and all the shows and what's happening now and they're all on the same page. It's all, we got talking about Stephen Colbert and how
Mm-hmm.
he used to be versus now, but they're all, it's just all stupid Trump jokes all the time. It's all the same thing. And I said, what it makes me think of is this scene in the movie V for Vendetta. Have you seen that?
I don't know. I haven't seen it.
Okay, you need to watch that. Watch V for Vendetta.
Right.
But well, if you haven't seen it, it's going to be hard to explain. But there's a scene where the chancellor's on this comedy show, and it's like, it's just surreal. It's like all the people at are just watching this and laughing, but it's like the joke is on them. It's really just this strange disconnected feeling, and that's kind of how I feel when I see these things. It's like,
well, once I got to do this for a little while, and I got off the Trump train to some degree, and then I started listening to others, I realized there's a new left, I would call it, and then there's a tribal center left, maybe, or I don't know how to describe it, but the center tribal left, all they seem to care about is hating Donald Trump.
Right.
You could come to them with a proposal and say, hey, we got Medicare for all. We're going to pass it this week. We got the votes. Right. Yeah, but are you going to impeach Donald Trump? No, we got Trump to sign it. We're going to get him to sign the bill. Well, I would rather have Trump impeached.
Right, exactly.
Than have Medicare for all.
Yeah.
And you just stand there with your mouth open going, what?
Yeah.
But, and it's we had the Mueller investigation. Mm-hmm. We had the investigation of the investigation. Then we had obstruction, which is, this still baffles me because Donald Trump would be guilty of obstructing something that didn't happen. Uh-huh. So again, you use some logic here and you think to yourself, and then we spent about $40 million in the investigation itself. Mm-hmm. And you've got homeless encampments in San Francisco, Seattle, Los Angeles, go around the country.
Mm-hmm. Right. And most people don't even care about the whole Russiagate thing. So when you ask people. Okay, so let's see. I want to just get back to.
Sure. Sorry.
Oh no, that's okay. I mean, we can go forever.
Or bad.
No, it's all right. So I think basically we can agree. I think the candidates with the contract, anti-corruption contract, is pretty. Mm-hmm. It's just it makes sense, and it's hard for anybody to really argue with it. Now, I want to say. While I am, a progressive, and I find most of the things, or really all of the things on Contract for American Renewal, to be things that I want to see happen, I think it, in a way, maybe some of it is just the wording, but is a little, doesn't appeal as much, even though each item on there has been polled, and it's over 50% of people support it. It comes from different polling areas. But okay, so what do you think about raising the minimum wage to $15 an hour?
Overall, I think I'm warming up to it more. When I'm looking at this from the days where everybody told me that you raise wages and companies will eliminate jobs, and they'll get kiosks and they'll go automated and so forth.
Right, and prices will have,
prices will. There would have to be some studies done. Mm-hmm. You would have to get some people together to see what the effects would be of it. I saw Bernie Sanders at the Walmart shareholders meeting yesterday, which was very enjoyable. I'm not going to lie. The reason because I think it's very populist to go in and tell the employees that your employer is not paying you proper wages. And Bernie used the term starvation wages, which I think those Walmart people at that point must have been cringing. But the bottom line is you're always going to get pushback from conservatives, people on the right, who are going to tell you, well, these are typically entry-level jobs. My teenage son needs a job, and I don't expect him to get a job that starts at $15 an hour.
Right.
See, this is where we have to maybe have some sort of age requirement or smarter people than me.
Right. I know what you mean. I feel the same way. I'm not an economist, so I can see what I think makes sense to me, but I can't analyze it in the way an economist would. But I mean, I think it's important to note like some recent studies that came out. Like you cannot afford a 1-bedroom. I think it's a 1-bedroom apartment in any city, any town, any city in this country on a minimum wage job.
That is correct. There's no. I mean, where I live here in Southwest Florida, the average rent in my neighborhood is about $400 than the mortgage I'm paying. So that's a problem, and it has to do with housing. By the way, it also has to do with Wall Street. Wall Street, during the bailouts, Wall Street came in and bought up all of these houses that were empty down here in Florida, and they became landlords. And they decided, well, if we can't get our money one way, we're going to get it another way. And guess what? They're getting it.
Right. So we have to start looking at root cause, of all of these things. I mean, have you seen the movie The Big Short? It's about the housing bubble and everything.
I'm definitely.
It's a great movie. And at the end, the guy that kind of bet on and figured out everything that was going on, he's investing in water. That tells you something. But anyway, yeah. I mean, whose fault is it that the rents are so high? Well, we had this huge housing bubble, and while in some places,
who bailed out the banks? By the way, can we both agree?
Yep.
Who bailed the banks
Democrat
out?
Obama.
Yes.
Yep.
Barack Obama did.
Yep.
So
exactly. So I mean, what do we do about the fact that now the wages can't possibly allow for people to afford a place to live? I mean, if you bought your house, I bring this up all the time. If you bought your house before the housing bubble, you have a completely different experience because you're paying, hundreds, if not more, less than most people now that go to buy now. So where does the blame lie in that? I mean, yes, you'll hear Republicans say it's all Sally.
Freddie Mae, Freddie Mac, whatever they're called. Yeah, those are just names for the lenders and so forth. Because we dealt with one of them when we were looking at a house, and I'm like, I don't think we want to even look at those guys. So, I think the bottom line in all of this is why there are so many progressives popping up, because they believe that capitalism has gone awry, as FDR believed that as well.
Yep.
So it's not a crazy construct to say some controls are needed, especially in the banking industry. But
we can thank Bill Clinton for repealing Glass-Steagall.
Yeah, that's true. But to your point about what Kim Iverson says and what you just said a little while ago, you got to be really careful with language. I think you and I both know the guy who's running for Congress up in Washington, 25-year-old truck driver. I won't mention him by name. Nice guy. I saw, in fact, Kim Iverson did an interview with him. And he's sharp. I hope he wins, because it would be like an AOC kind of thing in the Northwest part of the country. But you gotta be really careful with how you describe what you want to do, and coming out and saying, well, I'm a socialist and I'm a hardcore socialist and I'm going to bring socialism to everyone and it's going to be great.
Especially when that word is not even fully understood, and there's a difference between socialism and democratic socialism.
Correct. But even the word socialism, I mean, I've kind of settled on the term economic populism because it's the only thing I can think of that is reasonable, and that Trump people, by the way, can gravitate. They're going to hear populism. They're going to, okay. Right. It's like when Bernie went on Fox and he talked to their audience, which, by the way, Elizabeth Warren won't do. And he explained the things that he believes in. And it's not that far from where a lot of Trump people were in 2016.
Right.
You have to educate, and you can't scare. You got to remember, I spent many years, a lot of people didn't have my experience, but I got my political talking and walking and marching orders from conservative talk radio for about 20 years. And anytime any proposal where the government did anything was involved, it was described as socialism, even communism. I mean, they throw out pejoratives and hyperbole, and you say to yourself, but that's not really what this is. But you and I know that. But a lot of Americans, including many Democrats, like the Joe Biden people, they're already going around going, no, you don't want socialism. No, we got to stop. No, that's too far. I mean, there was a speech. I think Hickenlooper gave a speech the other day. The guy who has no chance at being the president.
Right.
And he said, and he got booed. He got jeered. Where he said, well, we can't go as far as socialism. And I'll tell you what. The people who understand what socialism is in the context of democratic socialism are basically a capitalist system with rules on certain things. Right. That's what it is.
Yeah. I know. I want to say, I'm not sure, but my conservative uncle might be watching. And
hey, conservative uncle. Hey, I can relate. We can have a talk sometime.
He's a banker. He's worked for 40 years in banking, but we have some good debates, and I think there are things that we will never agree on, but I think also there are just some misconceptions. I think one of the things I like to talk about is the fact that my grandfather, his father, came from nothing really and worked really, really hard. He was in World War II. Then he had the GI Bill, and he worked very hard, and I would say probably under any circumstances he would have prevailed. He was just that tough a person and that frugal, and he was always a pick yourself up by your own bootstraps kind of person, and I appreciate those lessons I got from him. But I would try to talk to him and say, okay, but look at look at America back then. I mean, you had a GI Bill. And the housing didn't eat up, 50% of your take-home pay, right? I'm not saying it was easy. They struggled a lot, but it was just that things were so different back then. And it's like now, all with deregulation, as you said, capitalism, we need some restraints and some rules, because what we have right now is, as the late great Christopher Hitchens said, is it's like we have socialism for the rich and free enterprise for the rest. And this is one of the things I would kind of bring up with my uncle, is it's like, well, why should all of these companies, why should the banks get a bailout? Why should, why are we subsidizing corn, agriculture that's, making us sick, basically, for corn, why? And then, so it's a double standard, really.
Right. I mean, car companies, why did we bail out General Motors? I mean, if they were failing, they should have reset. They should have declared bankruptcy and reset like everybody else.
Right.
There are laws already in place, but no. That phrase, that was just one of the worst things I've ever heard in a political discourse. You can be too big to fail. And that to me says, well, we've got to take care of the oligarchs. We've got to take care of the people that really take care of us, and we take care of them. But then, it's like when you put sanctions on a country, who do the sanctions affect? They affect the people. They don't affect the people in power.
Right. Right.
That's one thing I learned from watching Jimmy Dore a lot, because he likes to bring that up. It's true. Every time you sanction Venezuela, well, that's why the people are running around panicking and having difficulty, because we're turning the screws on their economy, and you'll never hear that in the news media. It's
no. And I had a chance to ask my grandfather. He passed away at 95 2 years ago, but I had a chance to ask him that, like, what do you think? How is this okay? This bailing out the banks? And I remember his response was like, he really didn't like it. But he was like, it just has to be done. Right. Or we're going to have this, horrible crash. And it's like, my thinking is, why is it okay for the people of this country, half of in poverty when they crash, when they can't make it paycheck to paycheck. It doesn't matter.
Well, so I heard somebody say this years ago during the whole bailout thing. It would have been a much more, I think, solvent way to deal with the crisis. You give 320 million people like $1 million or something. I forget how they described it, because it's already so far in debt as it is. Give them the money, let them share in the wealth, let everything else reset. They have money as a hedge. Maybe it wasn't $1 million, I forget how much, but they say in certain ways it might actually be cheaper to do it that way. And that's very Keynesian, print the money and give it away, and then
it would go back into the economy.
But it doesn't trickle down as much as maybe it worked for a while, and it's working a little bit now in the sense that, not that the guys are sharing it, but the numbers. This is why Trump might get reelected. It's why Ronald Reagan won the landslide. I expect
Trump will get reelected, honestly. Yeah. I really do. I don't.
But yeah, because the two candidates who could beat him, Bernie and Tulsi, are getting blocked. Now, the only drama, I think, is if Bernie hangs in there for a while, we can see, you and I are going to see out in the open what they're going to do to stop him. And it will be, I hope, the last straw for the people who are they're doing this all the time, like, oh, well, we have to see what's going to happen in the debates. Or, oh, we're going to have to see. No. I mean, they're coming with stories about he's too old. He's Jewish. That came out. He's cheap, and he's Jewish the other day. New York Times or Politico or one of those. And I'm sitting going, you got to be kidding me. This is the stuff that if a Republican did it.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I'm saying? It would be front page.
Double standards.
Yeah.
Always double standards.
So it'll be interesting.
What would you say, from the right? I mean, I know it's the word socialism, but what is really, that's the main reason they don't like Bernie, right? Do you think they don't understand his message of economic populism, or what are the main, I don't know, what do you think the main?
I would say I think they understand what he's about. But I think this is weird. It's weird programming and messaging that's happened over the last 50 years probably, and that is, we are going to train up the people on the right to vote against their own economic interests and enjoy it. And enjoy it. This is the big, because you can talk to somebody. We had something happen here where I live, which is really interesting. I voted this week. We had a referendum on an assessment that was going to be assigned to people with empty lots. Basically, they have to pay a tax to help fund a new fire station and to keep our infrastructure going. It was deemed by those on social media threads as socialism. And if you vote for this, you're voting for Marxism and all of this. It was unbelievable. And I actually stepped into the thread a couple of times. I said, wait a minute. So what you're saying then is the fire department, the police department, all of these departments, they're all socialist. Why do we have any of these services? Well, we agree to those things. Well, wait a minute. We're agreeing to kind of make the infrastructure better here.
Yeah, well, it's like when you hear people actually had the signs. I think it was Tea Party, rallies about get the government out of my Medicare or something. It's like certain things. It's just the rules don't apply, right?
So, but to answer your question is, and this was an example of programming. That's why I bring it up, because you couldn't have a conversation with this person because I tried to say, well, based on your argument, then any form of public services is socialism, and we're just advocating that this part of the town, the response time is 20 minutes and it should be 8. And people should be concerned about that, because if something catches on fire, you might not be able to get there and somebody might die. So your argument is we should let those people die because we don't need more taxes, more assessments.
Survival of the fittest.
And there's my original premise. There have been a bunch of people that will not even look at a Bernie Sanders like like they're like, oh no, he's coming. He's going to say some socialist
Right.
stuff.
Right.
He's going to talk about income inequality. See, these are all buzzwords that people on the right, they hear it and they just recoil. They don't even know.
But we have it on both sides. I mean, the programming is so strong that you can't get through to someone and have a real conversation about the issues because they just shut down before you can even get started.
And that's what the Trump-Russia collusion thing did too, because it's Elizabeth, and these are all the candidates that are in on this stuff. The Elizabeth Warrens, they want to keep investigating. They want to keep doing. Meantime, they want to run for president. So why run for president if you want to impeach the one that's there now? You could be running against Mike Pence. I mean, let's just, we're wasting, and I've been saying this in videos a lot, we're wasting time.
Yes.
We're wasting time analyzing things that we already know what the issue is. I mean, half these commentators, and no offense to any of them, they're all fantastic, but they'll spend their whole day basically having the straw man and talking about this happened and let me analyze this, and you know already that this whole thing is kind of set up and rigged.
Right.
And rather than doing research and trying to deal with the rigging, they keep going. They keep going with well, maybe I'll get more views if I rile up my fan base. Well, this is why I'm getting tired of doing videos already, because as much as I want to do that, and I know when I've done a video that will do that, and it might be helpful to people, I want the country to change. I want you and I to agree on things. I want us to start to deal with these problems.
Right. I mean, when you said I should have a channel, I joke, my YouTube channel is kind of a dumping ground for the candidate interviews I do and our just open forum. Because, I'm very passionate about these things, but I never was really about just doing a show. I guess I'm kind of in between activist and independent journalist.
Unfortunately, and because I have the music channel, there's got to be unfortunately, there's got to be some performance art going on there. Okay. There's got to be some, like looking at the camera, being witty, being clever, and that's why that's why Jimmy Dore is so popular.
Oh, he's fantastic. I mean, he's the best.
You take your medicine, with the spoonful of laughter.
Yep. And Jon Stewart really started that, right? I mean, and
originally,
yeah. And so Jimmy Dore delivers, information in an entertaining way, and that's really the only way to sort of stomach a lot of this stuff because a lot of it's so terrible. But okay, I want to ask you another one. Contract for American Renewal also has, rebuilding our crumbling infrastructure. I don't think anybody can argue on that one
Trump
either.
ran on that.
Yeah.
And he's trying to, it's so ironic that you say that, because the day that Pelosi was all upset, she was at the White House and Trump was supposed to have a meeting about dealing with the infrastructure. And it never happened because Pelosi had been with all of her impeached Trump associates.
See, as long as we can distract and just keep talking about all this garbage, nothing gets done.
Yeah, and Trump has a temper tantrum, and he probably did. And I'm not saying that was good, but the point is, he really wanted to talk about infrastructure. And you're sitting there, well, we need to impeach you, Mr. President. Well, I don't. And he says, well, I don't think infrastructure is going to get done today. Would you do infrastructure if somebody wanted to impeach you? Probably not.
Right.
Let's take what we can.
We have to see what that is really ultimately the goal. It is just to keep everyone distracted and hating Trump and keep the media, the media just stays on those stories instead of what really matters.
And it's a cash cow for them.
Yeah, exactly.
We know it is, but some of us, it's like, how much more can we, and what's going to happen to replace Trump if Trump was to go? I mean, what issue is going to be day after day drumbeat?
Right.
They made Trump. The media, they're the ones that made Trump the president and gave him billions of dollars in advertising. And now, and even Jeff Zucker at CNN said, you know what? Times aren't good for America, but times are great for CNN.
Yeah. Well, it was called the Pied Piper strategy. You know about that, right? In WikiLeaks. So I mean, it was all by design. Okay, well, here's a good one that will probably be.
Now give me a controversial one.
I am addressing climate change.
All right. Now this will be a little crossfire. Okay.
Yeah, here we go.
you wanted to be a little crossfire. Here's my thing about climate change. I try to get enthusiastic about it, but here's the tough sell for me. The entire world, and I think I've already maybe said this in a couple of my own videos, has to stop doing what they're doing in order to have an impact. Mm-hmm. So if the United States says, like those Paris Accords, everybody was like, oh, I can't believe Trump. Trump probably, it's the optics that people had a problem with.
Right.
It wasn't the actual stuff that was going to happen, because it exempted all of the worst countries, the worst offenders when it came to climate change.
Right.
So that's number one. Mm-hmm. Number two, transition. I cannot see the civilized world all transitioning away from fossil fuels in 10 to 12 years. Mm-hmm. I cannot see it. Mm-hmm. Maybe it's doable. I know, we put a man on the moon and so forth, and you can make those silly analogies. That we don't have the infrastructure for public transportation or high-speed rail. Mm-hmm. If you want to go travel somewhere, one of the things they talked about was eliminating air travel completely. All right. These are the things I hear, and I go, America is going to run from a lot of these proposals. They're going to run. They like the sentiment. They go, yeah, you're right. And then you've got people out there saying 12 years and we can't turn back. Mm-hmm. That might be true. And then my last premise on this is, do we really think if this is happening that we're going to be able to fix it? And I know that sounds very apocalyptic, but if it's really happening, I don't know if we can control it. We may have started it. We may have moved it. It may be natural stuff happening along with it. I don't know. I'm not that smart. But I just, it's going to be a tough sell, not just to the right, but people who are thinking, wow, I'm not going to have a car anymore. And maybe not right away, or maybe your car is going to have to be electric and driven by some other means and so forth. It seems out there. It seems a little out there, and anybody who doesn't feel like it's a little out there, I guess you have to be used to these ideas for a long period of time. I, again, come from the perspective, I'm a pragmatist. If the technology is there, fine. I mean, I think solar and wind and a lot of these other technologies would be more prevalent if they were a little more cost effective. And I think that's why it helps. I mean, obviously the fossil fuel companies are lobbying the crap out of everybody. Right. And they're going to continue to do it. I mean, if AOC was the president, I guarantee the lobbyists would run up there and say, look, hey, we're here. We're going to do clean energy in a couple of years. But in the meantime, the Green New Deal, the Off Fossil Fuels Act, which I actually like better, which is Tulsi Gabbard, because it's an actual plan. It's not just a non-binding resolution. Right. It's something we can shoot for, but we need like a JFK in the White House going onward. Right. This is how we're going to do it. You're going to have to educate, and it's going to have to be one of those collective moments where everyone at the same time sees it, and now you have to cooperate with everybody around the world. It's too daunting to me.
Well, I mean, I've brought this up several times, and people just look at me funny, especially Green Party people. But, I think for your average American person, just, especially people really struggling, it's, you try to talk to them about environmental issues, and, they're just trying, unless it's in their own backyard, unless they've got a toxic waste dump in their own backyard, they're not worrying about it. And it's not that they're bad people for not caring about the environment. It's just that it's not an immediate concern, and unless it affects you immediately, I think that's something that, I don't know, I think that's part of the, we talked about sort of the flavor of the Green Party that people, that doesn't resonate with a lot of people, even though their whole platform is not all about the environmental issues, but that's sort of the perception, right?
Right.
So, I've found that people are just much more, responsive if it's something like Flint or there were some candidates in Louisiana. There's an area called Cancer Alley, and the people that live there understand exactly how that pollution was leading to illness. But I think when it's this big, broad thing, and you're asking average Americans struggling paycheck to paycheck to care about the ice caps melting. Okay, sure, they should, but I mean, what what I'm saying? It's huge disconnect.
I'm glad to see. I thought we were going to do Crossfire here. It seems like you're in agreement with me to some degree.
Right.
Here's the thing that gets even more troublesome and thorny, though, is the language. What I just said and what you just said, are you and are we climate deniers at this point? Or
no, absolutely not.
Unreasonable people because we're not. We don't have the if you've got the technology and we can do this,
and it could create jobs, and I mean there's all kinds. Right. And I would say I'm for the Green New Deal. I don't I haven't dissected the whole thing. I don't understand all of it, but I'm definitely for moving in that direction. But you can't it was like when Hillary went to West Virginia and basically said, I'm going to get rid of all the coal jobs, even though she's not really for a Green New Deal either. No. I mean, she was completely absent for the Dakota Access Pipeline stuff. So
Tulsi was there.
Yep, she was. Yeah.
Tulsi was there. But you're 100% right. It's just a matter, I think, of having an actionable plan that people understand that they won't fear that they're going to go bankrupt. There has to be a transition period from, a guy who has an old clunker car, can't afford anything else, but it gets them from point A to point B. And we know those people. We've been those people. I've been in that situation. I'm thankful the car starts every day. And you're telling me, well, you need a car that's, zero emissions by this year.
Right.
Okay? Not to use this phrase, but how is he going to pay for that? Are we subsidizing him? And if we are, how's that all going to work? I want details.
Yeah. Very good point. Very good point. Okay. I think the ending the wars. I mean, that we said that at the beginning. I think that is definitely something that is across the board with.
However, here's the rub, and it's the big rub, because I've been doing this, and I'm the most discouraged about this one issue when I do videos. It's the people who come back to you and they say to you, well, you have a very naive view of America's role in the world. You don't understand geopolitics. You, sir, don't understand our relationship with Poland. I did a video about how we're sending troops to Poland, right, an ally, and we're building a military base there, and they're threatening to call the base Fort Trump, of all things. I said, well, it's the same with Israel or any other country. We are, again, expanding our military-industrial complex, and the tentacles are going out, and nobody really. But Dave, they're Poland. What's your deal with Poland? Poland's, you got to understand, Russia's right over there, and here we go. Here we go.
Oh, right.
So I'm like, okay, so I better step away from that particular issue. You're going, believe it or not, and you would say it's across the board at the beginning here. The libertarian Ron Pauls, the anti-war Tulsi Gabbards, and the Jill Steins, and all of the Green Coalition there would say, end the wars.
Right. I guess I should have said crossover appeal with that issue. It's definitely
it does have crossover appeal. It should, but the people who are on the center left and the neo-libs and the neo-conservatives, they're going to push back like nobody's business on that issue.
I guess there's just that sort of attitude of American exceptionalism and not having a problem with it. We kind of bully the rest of the world, right?
Yeah.
And we spend an obscene amount of money to do that.
Trillions, trillions and trillions of dollars, and the Pentagon has an accounting error of $21 trillion. So,
oops.
Yeah.
So, sorry. That's not good.
So, it's coming in
stereo. Oops. Okay. All right. So what do you think about a progressive, this is going to be touchy, especially if my uncle is watching, progressive estate tax. And let's see, so CFAR specifically says progressive estate tax on the top 0.03%, no, excuse me, 0.3% of Americans who inherit more than 3.5 million. I think going back to Eisenhower days of what the tax rates were then. I don't know, what is your feeling on that?
All right. Well, see, and I've heard good arguments from the right and the left on this, and I don't want to necessarily commit to one side or the other, but I don't want to also weasel out of it. I would say we have to do more quote unquote fundraising, and that fundraising, when the Walton family has, $146 billion in and they're the richest family in the country, obviously, like Bernie Sanders says, there's something a little out of whack there.
Right. And I'm glad you brought up Walmart again, because
so I would say that, just general estate tax, somebody who's they've paid taxes on the property their whole life. They paid income tax. They paid sales tax. I would say you've got to go really high up the income scale and really look at big, large companies like Amazon and Walmart and start there. And do an analysis. See how much revenue this can bring in before you do it across the board. If you can say, hey, we can bring in enough to say pay for Medicare for all. I don't know. One of the proposals that the real progressives are championing. Then if you come up with some numbers that work there, then by all means, I don't have a problem with it, because like you said, they had the marginal tax rate. I think they dropped it down. It's in the 20s now, I think, under Trump, and then they even dropped it more. And it was up in the 50s before Eisenhower, from what I remember. And they did that because they had a war. They had a war. They had the Great Depression, and ends weren't meeting. So we are the reason we're in $22 trillion in debt right now is because we never balance our books. By the way, Tea Party people, where the heck are you? Just throwing that out there.
Good point. Yeah, where are they? Just sort of fizzled out.
They got their figurehead. They got Trump in, who didn't really run on any kind of fiscal conservatism at all. Zero. He'd blow up the military budget, blow up, we're going to spend money on programs too, which we really haven't done. But they just, I don't know what happened to them. They all went away.
Well, about taxing the rich, I think one of the biggest misconceptions, and I think it's just the way it's language, it's the way things are worded. We're not trying to punish success. I mean, I think most people can agree we want to live in a society where, there are going to be some people that work harder than others. And I think the resentment there is that, like, hey, if I work really hard, and, I'm thinking of my grandfather, who was the most frugal person ever, and, he saved his money and he was careful, then why should those people have to pay for someone else? So I think it's really important to sort of differentiate between, we're talking about the mega, the Walmart, the Walton family. And again, how did they become that wealthy? Well, they're not paying their workers enough. There was something that circulated a couple of years ago where there were actually big bins inside the front doors of Walmart asking for donations at Thanksgiving of like canned goods and stuff for the employees.
Yeah. Well, Bernie Sanders raised this yesterday. And one of the things was really creative, and the conservative ears probably opened up a little bit, because he said, A lot of Walmart employees, because they're on or they're getting paid so little, a lot of them are on food stamps, public housing.
Yes.
Okay, so guess who's subsidizing Walmart?
Yes, exactly. That's exactly it. Yep.
And by the way, that's a lot of nuance. A lot of you have to go and I mean, it's like a Kim Iverson video. You've got to follow it, and and then you do one of these, like, holy crap, we're financing, we're helping people survive with our tax dollars because they're not getting paid enough.
Right. So we're helping the Walton family.
Right. So we're helping the Walton family get rich. We should look. The Walton family could make what? Maybe $5 billion, maybe whatever. Pick a number. They don't need 147 billion. They could live comfortably off $5 billion, and their employees could probably all make 15, maybe even $20 an hour. Who knows? Right. I don't know. Right. We'll see what the prices do in Walmart if they go. Look, if you're paying 15 an hour, and I've heard some progressives now saying 20. I've heard a guy from Washington say 20 an hour. Now, at a certain point, there are going to be people in professional jobs that go, whoa, wait. My wife, for instance, she's not making $20 an hour. She's in a medical profession. And, I'm lucky. I'm the stay-at-home dad that makes YouTube videos for a living, and I'm not making barely anything compared to her. But the point is this going to push everybody's wages up, and then we're going to have some sort of catastrophe? So you need smart execution of these ideas, and you need real economists who go in there and crunch numbers. You don't need theory. You don't need theory from the left or the right. What you need is an actionable plan where people sit down and they're not just worried. It's not like the Tim Geithner days where they're just worried about Wall Street. Right. Okay. Right. They're worried about Main Street first, and then,
But our two biggest expenses really are. I think you froze. Hang on. Internet freezing. Give it a second. We've lost Dave. Oh, there you are. Okay. I don't know what happened.
I was wondering if I'd lost you.
No. Right. So, our biggest expenses really are housing and healthcare. Yes. And, if we get that under control, that's a huge obstacle.
And by the way, there's you right there. There's your platform, Democrats 2020. You just summed it up. Housing and healthcare. That's all, and this would be, by the way, this would be like biggest thing in business, and you probably know this, keep it simple. Keep it simple. And you've got these two core issues, and we were talking about climate change. You can talk about climate change all day long. Right. People are they're gonna want to know about, how am I gonna pay my rent? Yep. And what if I get sick? Yep. Exactly. Done. Exactly. And that's what I'm excited about the fact, and I guess we should probably wrap it up here soon, but I think maybe we should do a kind of crossfire. It's not very argumentative here. We'll spice it up a little. It's more like it's friendly fire with Dave and Kelly. Yeah. But I think that's really what I want to do, is show that there are people across the country. I guess we're in that independent, we think about things. We're reasonable. We realize there can be compromise. Compromise here or there. And if we stick to those issues that people agree on, and honestly just kind of stay away from those hot button issues. Don't talk about wedge issues. I promise not to talk about abortion. All right. Right. I've had a bit of a what's the word? Revelation, or I have changed my views on abortion. Oh, okay. You know why? Well, we can go there if you want. Quickly. Okay, sure. Now let's have a little spice it up for a second. I'm still a very pro-life individual. However, the bottom line is people are going to do things, and this goes along with abusing alcohol, abusing drugs, all of the things that you can indulge in. All right? Say I think abortion's a bad thing. Some 11-year-old girl somewhere gets raped by a 40-something-year-old man, and she needs to get an abortion. I'm not going to be the guy to tell the mother and the 11-year-old that she can't get that abortion. there are circumstances where people are going to do things that I disagree with, but they should, Bill Clinton, unfortunately, I'm going to quote him here, it's probably better that it's safe, legal, and rare. And I don't hear too much rare talk.
Right.
I don't want to hear anything about abortion on demand as a birth control method and so forth. But there are circumstances, and I don't think we want to have the scene where the woman is running around trying to figure out she's got nowhere to go.
Yeah, we don't want to go backwards.
There's nobody who will do that procedure, and we're really kind of in the Stone Age at that point. So as much as I detest it, and I think, it's not just my faith, but it's just my instincts, and yes, I am a man. And there are women online when I was talking a couple times. I bet that was fun. I love it when a man is telling me what I should do. Well, I'm telling you, it's
your belief. I mean, and I think that's why part of why we can't ever really come to agreement on this is because it gets into your belief system, like when life begins and all those things.
Oh yeah,
so,
it's very divisive, and I'll tell you what, I just wasted a couple of minutes on it, and Meanwhile, there are people in San Francisco living in tents and doing anything to help them,
right?
Because we're too busy. And the tribalism, whether it's abortion or marriage or equality, whatever the issue is, it's like they keep us juggling. Keep going.
And those are exactly the issues that the media just hones in on and will just over and over and over again, because they don't want to talk about the things that we might agree on and come to some solution on. It's just the wedge issue. So, and it's funny you mentioned that about Republican voters. What did you say? Voting against their own interests,
economic interests, and enjoying it. That's
the
last part. That's a very Jimmy Dore type thing.
Right.
I didn't get it from him. I've made it up myself. But they are. Not only do they vote against their own economic interests, but they enjoy it. They say yes.
Well, I would say I had this revelation, and it was in 2016 that it just hit me like, oh, wow, wait a second. The Democrats are doing the same thing and I don't know why it took me so long to realize that, but they're doing the same thing with the wedge issues and the identity politics. I mean, and it is ramped up. I mean,
you and I needs to probably do another video about identity politics.
We should. That would be good.
It's the most. I mean, there were just today on Twitter. I was interacting with somebody who was, I forget who was complaining about. It's the whole bean counter issue. It's Elizabeth Warren is a woman, and she's a woman of Native American. No, she's not. But anyway. And I'm like, well, Tulsi Gabbard's a woman, and everybody's playing these games. Mayor Pete's gay. Don't forget that Mayor Pete's gay. And I'm thinking to myself, oh no, but what are they going to do? What are their plans?
Yeah,
what are their issues?
Exactly.
I mean, they're all in there now trying to push different candidates, and based on what they are. I mean, who they are. I mean, if you check all of these boxes, you should be present.
Right. I think it's just the lazy way out, honestly.
You have no ideas whatsoever. Anyway.
No, and I want to see going forward. We'll end it here, but I love what you're doing with your channel and talking about. I mean, I know it's about Tulsi now, but I think it really is about her platform, and I'm hoping. It's just good to see more people coming around that, and hopefully that will translate to more. I mean, I got to talk to so many great candidates over the last year and a half, and they all pretty much, their platforms are almost identical to Tulsi's. Yeah. And they do have tremendous crossover appeal when you get away from the labels and all those wedge issues. And so it's really hard. It's like walking through a landmine trying to, avoid them. Because people want to, it's like if they can get you on that, it's a distraction, and then you're not paying attention to the real issue. So I think that's the challenge, right?
Yes.
So we'll have more Crossfire where we agree on too much.
Friendly fire.
Friendly fire, we'll call it that. Maybe we should call it that.
Yeah, okay. I could call my channel. Well, we could do this, but I mean, I was thinking Third Rail for the channel. But Third Rail might sound too mean. I don't know, it's aggressive. Like I'm.
You're railing against everyone.
Third rail. Dave is upset about something. Look, life is short. You have to smile through it. We still live in a pretty decent country, but there are some issues that if we don't start looking into, I think we're going to go down a road that we're not going to be able to come back from. And I think with this MIC, military industrial complex, I think that issue alone, in and of itself, if it just is allowed to run roughshod over everybody, I don't know. I'm slowly starting to not recognize my country. So, and I'm hoping that people like you, people like me, but just people in general, will just wake up to the idea that we've got a few years to live on this planet, and we should try to leave it better than the way we found it. And I think for our kids, for our grandkids, if we have them, for just humanity,
Yep, exactly. Okay, I'm late for the carpool line, but
that's a tough line.
I
don't envy that.
All right, it was great to talk to you, Dave, and I think we should talk again soon.
Thanks.
So, okay, see ya.
Take care.
You too.